Next up, we're going to have a panel discussion based on what you've heard from the women, the anecdotes, and the guest speakers who've given, fabulous and informative talks. So if anyone's got any questions, they'll be able to direct them. And I call upon Isaac Blake to come up. Isaac is the choreographer and director of the Romany Cultural and Arts Company in Cardiff, who's spearheading the Gypsy Maker project, so be sure to ask him more about that. Can I call on Ken McLennan? Ken was instrumental in successfully bringing a test case to define ethnicity of Gypsy Travellers as an ethnic minority group in 2008 when he went to tribunal against his employers, JT. We're actually missing a panel member because the ferry caught fire en route from Arden and he couldn't get across, so it had to be cancelled. So I'd like to invite anyone from our three guest speakers who wishes to take part in the panel discussion. What about yourself, Nicola? Yeah, you happy to do that? Okay. I'll pass the mic over to our panelist.
And I'm doing my dissertation on basically strategies of resilience for Gypsy Travellers communities in East Scotland, in Eastern Scotland more like. And one of my questions, I think, addresses both David McPhee and also Michelle, we don't know where she is now, but is about if you believe with the experience you had on working more on World War I and the legacies, have the relations between Gypsy Travellers communities changed over the years, and particularly now, how is the issue of trust between Gypsy Travellers communities and the local councils now compared to what you had before? I know it's a very big, tricky question, but if you can answer to the best of, because the aim is really to try and find more long-term solutions. Thank you.
From my experience, I would say it's very much down to individuals and how individuals experience contact with any authorities, whether that's a council, an NHS board or any other public body. I think if they get a positive response, a positive experience about anything they go forward with, which unfortunately is not probably the case for the majority of people from Gypsy Travellers communities, I think their experiences are often, unfortunately, negative and often prejudged or prejudiced by people's own perceptions. Then that kind of feeling will carry forward through any future contact that they may wish to have as well. We're trying to address that. We've tried training, working with Michelle and working with some of our colleagues who are up there delivering that training, but it's only as good as those staff members that have come along to the training or counsellors that will come along to training sessions like that to hear more. So yes, your question was about the specific World War I project, and that's why we're trying to do it. We are trying to tell stories in a different way, to try and engage others in a different way, using things like World War I history, culture, arts, because sometimes that will engage people more easily than other kind of policies or strategies or things like that. So yeah, I think it's a slow process, and I'm sure it's a challenging process, but I hope that the experience has been a positive one for those that have been involved in it.
I've lived in Scotland 50 years. I've been married to McPhee for 34 years. Lady, nice lady, lovely woman. We're not together anymore. And I can tell you stories about how life was in Caithness, listening to old people in the First World War. And I remember my wife's grandfather was called Andrew McPhee, and he lost a leg in the First World War. And how he lost a leg was, he ran up the gunwale and was on a charge, when he was running with a gun on the back of horses. He had to run up the gunwale. If the horse died, he couldn't stop the charge. If he wouldn't charge, he had to run up the gunwale and cut the horse with webbing harness. So he had a knife, a sharp knife, and he just cut through the webbing, hanging onto another horse while he cut the other one free. Anyway, he didn't manage to cut it free. He got it cut free, but he fell off, and the carriage ran over his leg and cut his leg off. So he died in the poorhouse in 1945. He'd been beaten to death by the police on the Cassie Mire and threw him in the poorhouse, and he died that night. That's the story I was told by her father. And I know another story about just outside Ray, a family of McPhee's was camped on the side of the road, and he'd just come back from the First World War. He had gangrene in his leg. He had 8 children. And up the road was some Newlandses parked up from Orkney. In 1970, just about 1917, just before the First World War ended. Anyway, this fella, who knew he was going to die, said to his children, go up to that camp up there, in the middle of winter, I can show you the spot right now, in a little hollow in the ground. Unbelievable story. He's had 8 children. He said, go up to that camp up there and go and see what they'll do for you. These Newlandses didn't know this fella called McPhee, never knew him at all. And he took his children in and looked after the 8 children until they grew up to be proper people. Now, how many country folk or people, non-travellers, will do that in this day and age? Not many, is there? I know I would. If I seen 8 children on the side of the road, I'd take them in. I can tell you, and when I was born in Blackpool, a lot of travellers live in Blackpool, and when I was a little kid, all our families called it, we thought it was Asians, an Asian family, and as soon as they found out we was travellers, life became unbearable. I went to school, Waterloo School, just round the corner, and from 5-year-old until I was 11-year-old, the headmaster used to beat me to pieces because I was a tink and a jippo. And I find it very hard to talk to officials. The council comes round to me, tell me to shift. I find it very, very hard. I've had it all my life. Being a gypsy is worse than being a black man, to be honest with you. My daughter went to university. She got a bachelor's degree and everything. She's very clever. She's an accountant. She went to a party in Manchester with a black fella, Rastafarian and everything. And when she was at the party, these people from out of Manchester picked on her because they knew she was a traveller. They could pick up that she was a traveller, which people can. You can tell when if you're a traveller or not. You can know where you go. And they picked on her. And this black fella said, "Man," said, "I can't understand this." He says, "I can tell they're picking on me," he says, "but not you. You look like the same as them." He couldn't understand it. Beyond him. He said, "That's life. That is life. It's horrible." And the First World War, travellers come on from the First World War with nothing to go back to tents in the middle of nowhere with nothing. He got 30 bob a week, old Andrew McPhee, for losing a leg in the First World War and 2 medals. Sad do. Proper sad do. Now look, this is the first time I've ever been to anything like this, and I'll tell you what, it's very nice to see travelling people of all walks of life all being together. I'm usually seeing people getting drunk and having a fight. They're like Appleby Fair, you know what I mean? Not going anymore because of trouble. But this is unbelievable. This is nice to see. Very nice to see. Very nice, you know what I mean? Not what I expected. Well, mind you, not kicked off yet, have we? Anyway, that's all I've got to say, you know what I mean? But I know a lot about what's going on in the travelling world. I've had it all my life, you know what I mean? And this is nice. Honestly, it's really, really nice. But anyway, that's all I've got to say.
Thanks to Tom for that. I think that about sums it up. Has anyone else got any questions? You're not a particularly interactive audience so far, so come on, show a bit of vigour there, you know. Anyone got a burning question? Yes? Yeah, come up to the mic. Sorry, I can't go at you. It's not say answer that.
It's a question, I think it was for Nicola. My name's Maureen Wolfer, and I'm very interested in the history of childcare in Scotland. And I work part-time at Strathclyde University. And you'd mentioned, I think it was yourself, had mentioned that if there was a threat that if the women didn't settle, the children would be taken from them. And I just wondered if there had been, because I know in other parts of Europe that the children of gypsies and travellers have been sort of singled out and treated badly. And I just wondered if there had, in fact, been children taken from families, and if they've been able to keep in contact with their gypsy traveller origins.
Sorry, is this one working? Does that work? Yes. I didn't really, as I say, you could have done a whole paper actually just on what's in the records from this account, but yeah, that was one of the more distressing parts of it, that great discussions in the committee about removing tinker children from their parents. Does the tinker care whether, and it's really in that kind of tone, whether they actually love their children enough? I mean, it really sounds quite horrible, but it's the idea that that if you remove the children from them to give them an education, they were actually, some of the children were put in industrial schools, which would generally be there for people who couldn't handle their children at home, or there was issues. So the kids were put in, the girls especially were put in industrial schools and kept there. And if they managed to complete their education, the best possible outcome was that the girls went on to domestic service or something like that. What generally happened was that their father turned up on the day they were due to come home. or to leave the industrial school. And that was seen as a terrible outcome because the father returned, the child left with the father, of course he did, and they went back to the lifestyle that the school had meant to sort of turn them away from, if that's the case. So that was actually in the records, and there's quite a lot of debate about whether the young folk should be removed from families. And one of the things about colonies and settling gypsy travellers in specific areas, that's not bringing them into towns. That was actually trying to have a halfway house so that they would actually get land. They would be given some farmland. They wouldn't go as far as to give them a cow, I think. That was one of the things I read in the... But they would give them... so they would have a sort of ability to be self-sustaining without the travelling. But one of those was that if the incentive to stay would be the threat of removing their children and putting them into school. So there's quite a lot in the reports about that, about how they could implement that and what the effect would be on gypsy travellers. And like I say, that kind of discussion on whether, whether the gypsy traveller would mind, whether it was... I can't really describe it without you reading it because it sounds fairly horrific, really, but... what would be the best incentive? How could we make them do this was really the kind of point, and taking the children and putting them in schools was one of them. And of course, a part of that was to make sure the kids did have a good education, because of course they only went to school sporadically, and the other big issue was that when they went to schools, a lot of the children, when they eventually got to school, were too old for the year group they were in. And if you have a sort of 8-year-old in with the primary ones, it's just appalling from the word go. The child just almost thinks, I'm not in with the babies, I'm bigger than these kids, and it's just but they're at the level of reading for a 5-year-old, but they're not at the level of behaviour. But the schools didn't have any capacity to deal with that, so you had quite old children mixed in with the younger ones, and then there's no incentive for the child to stay and learn. They just hate the whole experience. Who wouldn't? So I think that's another issue as well. But in some cases they have lists of names where they were aware that girls particularly had moved into service, but in some cases they were allowed to keep in contact, I think, but they weren't allowed to come and take them away. But on the day they were due to leave, I think it was a year of 16 years, they were always amazed that somebody turned up and the child left. But there's lots more to read in the report. If you're doing work on it, I would certainly recommend it. It may well be that these reports can be found in other places as well. These were just the Duchess of Athol's copies of everything, so they might exist somewhere else too. Does that answer your question?
Yes. I think it's just very interesting that, having read quite extensively on the history of childcare in Scotland, it's something that's just not there.
Right. And
I tried to do a bit of sort of research on it, so that's maybe catch you later.
Okay, yeah, I'd be glad to speak.
Thanks. Just a very quick mention here. I was very lucky indeed to meet and speak with Sheila Stewart, who's written a few books, and there's quite a lot of personal memories and recollections from her own family and people that she knew on the subject of children being taken away from their families, and I would refer you to her books, and Moira, I'll lend you mine if you like. It's and just wanted to mention that in case anybody didn't know. The other thing is, this isn't a question, but I wish to show my sincere thanks to the travelling gypsy community for being so generous as to share their culture and their stories, because I'm not surprised that there's a wariness, because some of them suffered so much at the hands of some of the settled people, but we're not all like that. Thanks.
Thank you. Now, we've heard about hidden archives in Blair Castle and hidden art collections in Europe, so I'm particularly fascinated to learn from Isaac about his Gypsy Maker project to archive art. I mean, is that going to result in my art being hidden from public view, Isaac? So
Thank
can
you
tell
for the
us more about
question,
that
Seamus.
project, because it's a very exciting project, and I think this is an opportunity for him to share it with you all. And he's such a prominent member of Romney Society down in Wales that I couldn't let this opportunity slip by. Right.
The actual project is groundbreaking in the sense it's the first of its kind in Europe that is actually commissioning new work. Of course, there are collections of work being captured either orphan or either orphan work. I know quite a lot of spaces have gypsy and traveller artifacts and artwork, but usually you are right, it is actually hidden. But we haven't came across a project like Gypsy Maker that is actually commissioning new work, so it's actually quite groundbreaking for a European initiative. And I was really pleased that Seamus was one of the artists for the pilot project to capture the Gypsy Roman Traveller work. The work will be on permanent display. We're hoping to have a cultural centre in Wales, and we also work with the National Library and the National Museum in Wales. So we work with St Fagans, which is the National Museum for Wales, and I'm on their diversity forum. And I'm always campaigning about making sure there is visible identity of the Gypsy Traveller art within the museums. And the idea behind it is actually we have the work out on permanent collection, as opposed to it just being a little fab, or it comes out occasionally if there's a news story that breaks. So if you saw my Big Fat Gypsy Wedding, I know people, then there's a spike in interest. People want to find out about Gypsy and Traveller culture. But your work, back to your question, your work will be part of the National Museum for Wales, and my job on the diversity forum is to make sure the work is visible, to make sure the work is seen, so when Gypsy, Roma, Sinti and Traveller children and people from the settled community go in the National Museum, they can see the Gypsy and Traveller culture clearly reflected within the National Museum.
I just wanted to ask you that question because nobody's ever bothered to collect any of my work prior to this, so I was wondering, what your motives were. Were you going to hide it all away from public view? So that's one aspect of what's come out of today's talks. The other thing I'd like to ask Ken about is why he feels it's been such a struggle for the Gypsy Traveller community to obtain recognition of their ethnic status, and he's been actively involved from a background in social work in campaigning for Gypsy Traveller rights. So Ken, can you give us your thoughts, give us an overview of what the problem might be in society?
I was warned before I came up here to moderate my responses to any questions asked of me, because I get quite excited about the subject, get upset too. I think that a few people responded to say that that there may have been some sort of improvements, and maybe in some places and in some settings there has been. I don't know. I've gone and hidden up in the Western Isles to escape all the kind of things that were happening on the mainland. At least that's what I thought. It didn't quite work out that way. I personally don't think that things have changed really much for centuries, for a long time. And I really don't see things moving that fast. I think there are good people in lots of different organisations, even in government, who are sympathetic, who understand some of the issues. But whether or not there's a political will to make the changes that are necessary, and it doesn't only apply to the Scottish Gypsy Traveller community, it applies to other people too. But I don't think there is another group of people in Scotland who are treated so badly, and I think there's no shortage of evidence about that. There's also very clear evidence about attitudes towards the Gypsy Traveller community. And I hear comments every year, like when I visit people in the mainland, derogatory comments about the travelling community. So I don't think in many ways things have actually changed an awful lot. But there are a lot of people out there who would like and who are trying very hard to make change. But how you do it, I don't know. You need the political will.
Good success stories. I do believe there is a long way to go. I'm always a critical friend with government. We need to push that envelope a little bit more. But actually, there are some pockets of some really good practice and some really wonderful professionals who work their heart, who are worth their heart weight in gold. But no, it's I'm a gypsy person. I've lived on a site, and who would think a gypsy person would get a scholarship to train at a top university as a contemporary dancer? It was unheard of, and I was either a gypsy man living on the site, and then when I was at university, I was a contemporary or a ballet dancer, and then I was back to being a gypsy, and it was such a weird transition for me. But I'm actually finding out. I'm actually linking up with other communities, linking up with our Scottish colleagues here, which is wonderful, and that's actually linking up communities, and I'm really pleased that Seamus has the initiative to link up communities where we used to link up more because of travel and occupation, and now we don't link up so much, but these sort of events are actually groundbreaking. And I've recently started working for the Rom Archive, and the Rom Archive is a wonderful initiative, and it's looking at Roma, Sinti, and obviously we fed gypsy in there too, and obviously traveller arts and culture across Europe. And my team are dancers, choreographers, academics, and we're focused on the dance section, so looking at religious dance to all the way to folk to flamenco, and obviously I'm contemporary. So there, but there are loads of hidden little treasures out there, and one thing I'll finish on now. Obviously, I'll digress further. We have a wonderful initiative in Wales. We've got our community champion program. We've got people from the community that live the gypsy travel life every single day, from cradle to grave, who are engaged with the actual charity, who are actually employed as paid workers with the charity. And as a charity, we are groundbreaking. We are actually the first community-led charity in the United Kingdom. Of course, there are other charities out there working with Gypsy Roma travellers, but we're the first ones that are led. Our trustees are from the Gypsy, Roma and traveller community. We have top academics on our governing body and people who live on the Gypsy and traveller site. And the people who actually are paid officers working with the charity are from the Gypsy, Roma and traveller community. So we are seeing change. We've still got a long way to go, and I do echo what you said. There were still more conversations to have. But I try to see the positive side of life, and how can we... you can always have a fight, but actually I don't think that's going to work. I think, how can you start a conversation, okay? We have certain models that disproportionately affects Gypsy Roma travellers, but these models were made by people with white faces. They were made by non-Gypsy. You guys made these models up. Well, actually, maybe we need to reflect and actually adapt our own practice, So, but I'm around all day. I can do a dance workshop, I can do a presentation on the charity, whatever you want, but over to you. Thank you.
Can I say, in Scotland, we're very lucky that we've got the Scottish Human Rights Commission. And there is a Scottish National Action Plan on Human Rights, which all public bodies and governments have sort of supposedly bought into. That's been on the go for 3 years now. And the way that the Scottish National Action Plan on Human Rights work is about treating people as human beings. It's not about being this religion or that religion or this ethnic minority group or whatever, but treating everyone as human beings. And if the Scottish National Action Plan on Human Rights was being implemented, and public bodies and government, etc., were actually working hard on it, then a lot of the issues that are being discussed here today, and discussions that are taking place amongst other groups, wouldn't be happening, because we'd be all treating people as human beings. And that's what we are. We have all these labels attached to us and all this kind of thing. But the progress with that particular plan is a little bit not exactly encouraging, and that's because people are not buying into it, because for a variety of different reasons. But if you all could put pressure on your own local authorities, any agencies that you work with, to raise that agenda again and make sure that they are buying into it, that they are doing what they have signed up to do. It's great talking about things, but at the end of the day, it's putting it into action. We can talk about, what some particular groups are doing, etc., till we're all dead. But it's actually getting people out there to do things. And there are groups that are doing very good work. But when the rest of the people in your communities are not taking it on board, are not putting their bit into it, then it doesn't really, I don't think it does happen. But Seamus is probably the best person to respond to that one.
Sorry, what was your point?
You're even more cynical here, David.
I was flagging. I think that not enough is being done because there's this unwillingness to address the issues and to look introspectively on the part of bureaucracy and central government, and it necessarily involves looking at investing money in changing things, and that's what makes most of these attempts to redress inequality hit the buffers. So I would say that essentially is a matter of finance, and that people want to cost cut and save themselves any outlay in the long term. I'll just pass over to Isaac here. I think he wants to make a point.
I'm going to obviously plug Wales because I'm from Wales. In Wales, the Welsh Government were quite good. They were groundbreaking. They had a project called Step Up Cymru. It was an opportunity for underrepresented groups to have the opportunity to be paired up with a local assembly member, and I was paired up with the Helen Mary from Plaid Cymru, and I found out about policies, how policies are made, how they're implemented, but most important, how to influence decision. I would like to believe that there is a willingness from government. They just need a little help and support. And we have seen that through the work of the Romani Cultural Arts Company, there is direct work with policy that actually makes a difference on the actual ground. And we have seen changes on the actual ground, which is groundbreaking. But I always make sure whatever events I put on, I coordinate. There is representation from the government, and they just don't say no, because I will keep knocking the door until someone comes to the event, and I'm a very persuasive person, But yeah, it's I can't speak for Scotland, but I can speak for Wales.
I'm mindful that we've overrun slightly, and that everyone will be desperate for their lunch, but I think there's one chap here who would like to make a point before we close.
Yeah.
You've certainly heard, a range of different views and quite an open and rounded discussion. I'm sure you can take valuable lessons from that, and we hope that you treasure memories of your day. I hope you also stay for the workshops in the afternoon session, for the basket making, for the fortune telling, and for the dance, of course. I'm eager to see this.
You can join in.
But I'll pass you over because this chap's got a question. This is Ian Johnson.
Hi there, it's not really a question. Ian Johnson. Ken and I did our social work training in 1975.
Shh, don't give away our age.
And I can remember when the Bible then was Father Beefsteak or something. Beefsteak, yes. And of course we were taught that you need to promote self-determination, and you need to be non-judgmental. And of course 40 years further on, I've had a career where very often I've been forced to be judgmental, and I've not treated people in the way that's appropriate. And I've been under pressure by authorities that want to prescribe what social workers and other people do. And but I do believe what you're saying, because I've seen a lot of very positive change. And what I now think is that we need to promote movements for change. Now, David talked. It's good to hear you talking about the work you've been doing in this project. But of course, I was interested in the fact that you're dealing with contracts for social services, and of course, what we need to do is to make sure that the words you now get from social workers, like that services are personalised and that are about promoting choice are really made real, because very often when you need a service, it's far from that. And of course, I think that social workers want to give, and home carers and other, want to give that kind of service, and very often they give it voluntarily in their own time. And we need to demand that the people that manage the services and organise them change. And I think this has been a really enjoyable morning, and it's a great day, and it's very nice to be here. And I just wish everybody success in their endeavours to get the right things in the future. We've had a few days of these bloody elections, so I mean, we really do need to get moving in a very positive way, and this is great. Thanks.
Thank you. We've had some positive comments and some positive feedback from people around the room, so please, just take a moment to fill in the monitoring and evaluation forms, because it's vital that we record, people's thoughts on the day. I don't know about you, but I'm parched and hungry, so I'm heading for a bite to eat. And then please file back in, because Eleanor's going to strike up with an eclectic mix of songs around 1 or slightly after 1, so she's not to be missed. Okay, right, thank you.